As a child, we all long for a hero. As a society as a whole, we search for that leader that can be our hero. But as we mature and as we grow, it dawned on us that the hero is inside every one of us. And in the world's social media, we all start at zero. And slowly we search deep within ourselves to find who we are. And we have that moment of truth where we embrace that the hero that we've been searching for has been there all along. It is living deep inside of every one of us. And we start embracing that journey and we become that hero that we search for.
Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to episode 59 of Zero to Hero. Got another awesome guest coming at you today. He is the owner of KC Auction and Appraisal Company. His name is Jason Roske, so let's go ahead and bring him in. Jason, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Gino, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, buddy. Thanks for asking. So before we get into the show, like we always do, tell everybody a little bit about KC Auction and Appraisal Company. What are you guys doing over there?
Absolutely. So we started about close to 20 years ago. My oldest son's 21 and moved back here from DC at that time. But we started an auction company because I was in the antique industry. I used to buy and sell antiques, had a shop in Waldo. I used to buy and sell online on eBay and travel the country doing shows. And so I spent a lot of time going to auctions and realized there really wasn't a good, solid choice in Kansas City itself. There were some great weekly auctions in the region, but nothing really in Kansas City for whatever reason. Some had tried and failed, others had retired. And so I just saw this spot where I could hopefully step into a void and fill it with the product that I thought the customers would, and our clients would respond to. And obviously we've done that. It's been close to 20 years now, so it's worked out pretty well.
That's awesome. Wow, 20 years of auctions. That is absolutely incredible. What do you think the coolest item that you've ever sold is?
Probably the coolest item we ever sold, or the most historically important, was we sold in fact, the profile picture that you put of me in the beginning of the video shows you looking at a bunch of books. And those were the diaries of Lieutenant Commander George Leslie Stout, who was in charge of the Monuments Men in World War II. So the movie that George Clooney played the lead role in about 10, 15 years ago, that movie was based on this guy and his diaries. And we sold those diaries. So that was the most interesting thing, historically speaking. And we sold those to the Smithsonian. So they're going to be kept and shown forever. And there's a new Monuments Men group out there now, and they've actually studied them. They sent me pictures of them looking at these, the diaries. And it was just a really, really neat moment for me because I started this just kind of selling anything I keep my hands on, right? When you start a business, you want to sell the great things that get you national publicity. But the reality is you're selling kitchen sinks, like literally you're selling kitchen sinks because you have to sell enough to pay the bills. So it's been interesting to see that growth and that change and that recognition that has come over the years.
Yeah, that's so cool. What a cool piece of history to have in your hands. How did that end up in Kansas City, I guess, is the question to ask.
All right. So George was from Iowa originally. And he died many, many years ago. And his son married a woman and they moved to Kansas City. And he passed on several years ago. And so the daughter-in-law basically lives in a retirement facility, a senior facility here in Kansas City. Called me up, told me what she had. She was a referral from another client who was extremely pleased with our work and said, would you be interested in these? And I said, oh, absolutely. And when she told me what they were, it was one of those I couldn't believe it type of situations.
Right.
And I get there and I'm looking, and they're as legitimate as they could be. And I had goosebumps almost the entire time I was in her home. And it was a really, really neat process and just amazing. And that was right at the beginning of COVID.
Wow.
So if she'd have waited like 6 weeks, we couldn't have done it because they weren't even allowing guests into the facility at that point.
Jeez.
It was, the timing on that worked out beautifully for everybody. But yeah, that was a pretty neat deal.
Yeah, now they've got it, obviously, so people can go take a look at that. That's really cool. How, what percentage of kind of private buyers are there to more like organizations like the Smithsonian or other museums that are out there?
Right. Museums don't buy as much as people think they do. They publicize it when they do. But the reality is, most museums have way more than they'll ever display or show. I'm on the board of the Ashby Hodge Gallery of American Art in Fayette, Missouri. It's a small museum, and 97, 98% of what we have hasn't been seen in 20 years and won't be seen in the next 50 years. And so there's not much that museums are buying. So they're buying one or two pieces here and there. As far as an overall percentage, it's going to be 1 or 2% is going to a museum. The percentages that we look at more closely are how many people are buying to resell as compared to buying for themselves. Auctions have historically been considered um, a wholesale marketplace, which they kind of have to be, because we're selling objects in an accelerated time frame, right? So it's not like you have a shop where you can sit down for 2 years and somebody's going to pay you the retail price for it. We're getting, from the time we get things in house to the time we're selling it, 8 weeks is a long time. We'd like to be 4 to 6 weeks on average. Anything longer than 8 or 10 weeks, we start to get really antsy about, why is this still here? Now, there's times that it makes a lot of sense, right? When I'm working on a big auction, putting together a collection to be able to market those things better for our clients. Um, but our retail buyer to wholesale buyers is almost 50-50 now. When we were used to be in the West Bottoms, having an auction every other week with 75 to 100 people in front of me, selling to those people, how many dollars am I bid? 50, 75, 100. It was more like 85 or 90%, 75 to 80% were wholesale buyers. There were dealers buying for inventory in their shop. Now it's almost 50-50. So we're getting a lot more retail participation, a lot of people buying for themselves and their homes. And of course, that generally translates into a higher price received for our clients. And at the end of the day, who we're selling for is our most important asset. And so we're going to make sure we take care of them as best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. So kind of in that transition from the auction there in the West Bottom to more of the online auction is where you saw kind of that shift in who the ideal buyer was for Casey auction. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, yeah, and we figured that would be the case, and when we tell people online, like, oh, you have buyers all over the world, and that is true to a degree, but 90% of what you see in any city is available in any other city, right? So the things that we ship out are either really unique, or somebody has a very specific attachment to that type of genre for whatever reason, and so the online bidding definitely helps with that expansive reach. And we have buyers all over the world. Our heat map, when we put it together, I mean, the United States is covered in blue dots, but we have blue dots all over the world where we've had bidders or buyers from. In fact, I'm emailing with a guy in Japan right now over a pocket watch that we're selling, because it's a really high quality pocket watch, and he wants more details um, than we have on the listing, which will address that too. So, but yeah, we by taking care of our clients in that way, we're able to find things for buyers all over the world.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you guys obviously made that transition to the online kind of before the pandemic that you mentioned there. But I do still want to ask, how did that really affect you guys? Did it affect you? Did you see some difference in buyer patterns? Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. How it affected us was, when the pandemic first hit, we had a couple of big auctions scheduled. And our client, we were selling a big estate. And so we had, in my business, I have a lot of clients or very few clients at one time. If we have a consignment auction, we might have 20 sellers. If we have an estate auction, it's one family. And we had this family had a really big collection of early Americana, and the daughter or sister lives in Texas, and her daughter is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. So she was hearing everything all day about the severity of COVID. And at the beginning, we were all concerned. So it changed us, because our client was super concerned about selling things right away. And so what we had to do was get even more detailed with our data. I went back through our previous 6 or 7 years at that time, Gino, and so we have an auction online for 2 weeks. I can tell how many people have registered to bid every day. I can see how many lot views I have every day. I can see all this information that we'd been cataloging. We'd actually been accumulating that data, but not doing anything with it. But I was able to go back and computate everything and say, at the end of day one, we should have X amount of bidders and X amount of lot views and X amount of bids and so on and so forth. And after day 3 and day 5 and day 7 and so on and so forth. And I was able to go to my client and say, look, let's put this auction on for 3 weeks as opposed to 2. That gives us more time to, to incubate and to percolate in the marketplace. But here are our benchmarks that we've seen historically. If we're not hitting these benchmarks, then we can just close down the auction and say COVID's made us do it. And nobody would have thought twice about that at that point in time, right? Because nobody knew what the world looked like. The reality was the buyers turned out in droves because everybody was home on their computer all day. And this was something different to do and look at. And then as the pandemic progressed, more and more people did more projects around the house. They painted, they moved. Real estate was the biggest market in the world at that point. The only thing you could do, legally, was buy and sell property. So people did. And anytime you move, you open up. There are things that you need for your new house and things that you don't need from your old house. And auction is a way that's oftentimes transferred ownership. So when the real estate market booms, our decorative arts areas do really, really well. As the pandemic has gotten to the phase that we're at now, we're getting back to more of a normalcy as far as our overall bidder profile and activity is concerned, but it's still stronger than it was because we know the data is key, right? Like my business has changed drastically in 20 years. We're looking more at the data and how do we maximize, customer interactions and put information in front of those people that they're going to react to it the best. And then, lookalike audiences, all that kind of stuff that we all have access to now that we didn't 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even makes that our efforts much more effective. And so that's what we're seeing now is that the activity is less per person, but we're still seeing more people are active in the market.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I think people were looking for that outlet, and it's a way that you can make money, right? When a lot of people were home and out of work, I think that's part of why eBay has blown up so much in the way that it has, right? Is you can buy something for probably less than what it's really worth, right? And then you can turn it around, put it right back on there and sell it for more than it was. So no, that's awesome. Now, is there a hot ticket item right now or genre here in April 2023, or people just kind of looking for the normal stuff? What's going on now?
Yeah, so what we're seeing historically, we've always seen that the better quality objects in any collecting field have always done better than the rest. And that's still very much the case. Condition is always crucial and king. You have two pieces, you have a vase that's in perfect shape and a vase that's got any kind of damage. The difference can be 90%, like literally can be 90% difference in value just on a chip on a piece of glass. So quality and condition. But coins have always been popular for us. Fine art and jewelry are the areas that we focus on. And so we always have a good, strong buyer database ready to look at those things. And right now we have a great watch auction online, and we're working on a coin collection that's going to go online here in the next couple of days. So those are the things we're looking for. But again, anything that's really good. We just sold a really great auction a week ago that had Oriental rugs that a few years ago, Oriental rugs were really hard to sell. They didn't bring much money. And we had several rugs bring over $1,000 this time. And they were all worn. Like there was not a pristine rug in the group. It was all, they just had a great look and they were old and they're from a good estate. Like there's a lot of factors going into that, but there was a lot of bidder participation. So it's, again, it just has to have that look or that quality that our buyers are looking for right now.
Interesting. Yeah. So when you go look at the data from time to time, I'm sure that's got to be a little bit crazy depending on how people are feeling that month or that year with what they're buying. So that's really interesting that you guys keep that. That's got to be a history lesson in itself and buyer patterns, right? As a marketing company, we kind of look at that ourselves. So that's
and like what's funny, Gino, is that we used to consider ourselves an auction company. We still call ourselves that, but we're really a digital marketing company using the online auction platform to determine price for our customers or for our clients. And so thinking about it in that way has really helped us to tackle and address and further explore how can we do better for our client. I've taught classes for the National Auctioneers Association in regards to this. But I used to spend a lot of time reading the Main Antique Digest and Art and Antiques and things like that because I like this stuff. I mean, obviously, you see, I have art and antique furniture and glassware behind me here at my office. But my job is really marketing anymore. How do I find and reach more people that are going to be interested in the things that we're selling. And it's worked out really well. And our clients would agree with that, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense, especially if you think about kind of the model of auctions, right? The better that, the more that you can sell something for, the more that you're making, the more that your client is making. So that's
Right.
absolutely, you're 100% right. I mean, it really always comes back down to the marketing and the sales, right? But especially when we're dealing in an online space where that's really the only way that people are going to find you nationwide, right? Unless they're from Kansas City and know of you from just being regional. But yeah, you
But
got
it's
to get yourself out
what's
there.
interesting is historically in the auction industry, marketing was not really thought of that much. It's
Mm,
crazy when I think back. We used to run an ad in the KC Star, and that was kind of it in the
yeah.
auction block. The only people looking at that are people who are interested in auctions and people looking to get a deal who are dealers. Like looking back, I'm like, how did we not think about this differently back then? But we just didn't have the tools at our disposal like we do now, right? I couldn't take a
Right.
database of bidders and do anything constructive with that. I could play with it a little bit and find out some details, but there's not much you could do. Now you can do so much with it that it doesn't make sense not to explore those options.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. It's something that me and our founder Kevin were just talking about the other day. Is industries that underutilize marketing, right? I think manufacturing right now is one of those where they feel like they don't really need it, right? But they're not thinking about talent acquisition. They're not thinking
Right.
about marketing to other businesses that don't know about them yet. So it's kind of that old boy kind of word of mouth type. That's what they live on. But just like the auction world changed, that kind of stuff will change as well, and the
Absolutely.
tools are out there now, right? That you can utilize for free. You don't have to call the KC Star, and run an ad and give them print. You can jump online, type it all up and hit post and it's right there for you. So
And it's a lot more cost effective.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it used to cost us, I want to say $14 a line in the Kansas City Star. My website was kcauctionco.com because that would fit on a line. Any more characters, it'd be a extra. I'd have to pay for another
Oh
line,
geez.
right? Like people, you would never even think of that now. But it's it's like early Twitter, except it was even tighter.
Right.
And so my ads were hundreds of dollars, and I'm reaching the same hundreds of people every 2 weeks. I'm not reaching anybody new. Now, if I spend a few $100s online, I'm reaching thousands of people who are interested in things like this, but not in auctions necessarily. And so just be able to much more effectively reach retail buyers, which at the end of the day, is what I do for my clients. My client is my most important asset. My customers are great. I can find more customers with good merchandise. If I take care of my clients, I get great merchandise, which brings me good clients, good customers. So
Absolutely. Yeah, big catch 22 there for sure. Well, Jason, let's get into the meat of the show here, man. So not KC Auction and Appraisal Company, but who is Jason Roske?
I'm a old married white dude. Married
I
close to
heard that.
30, married
Seconded.
close
Yeah.
to 30 years now. I think 28 will be this July. Have a couple of kids. They're both juniors, one in college, one in high school. My oldest goes to St. Louis University and is studying abroad in Madrid, Spain right now. My youngest goes to Rockhurst High School here in town. They're both Eagle Scouts. So his mother, my wife and I are really proud of that. Those boys doing that, but also the work we put in to get them there, because it's
Yeah.
definitely a family ordeal. In fact, we're getting ready for our youngest's court of honor right now. He's been awarded the Eagle, but the ceremony is happening in a couple of weeks.
That's awesome.
I volunteer around town in different places. I'm a member of the Waldo Brookside Rotary Club. I've been active on their board for many years. I volunteer on a board, like I talked about, the art gallery. I do things like that around town. And then just personally, my wife and I, like I said, I'm married 28 years, we like and collect artwork. We live in Brookside. She's from Liberty originally. I'm from Minnesota originally. And that's kind of it anymore. That's kind of a boring life anymore. Just working the family.
Well, I mean, and you're selling incredible pieces of history and art and all those other things on top of that as well. But no, obviously that's the foundation, right? You're not able to do any of those things without having that positive foundation. In 28 years, man, congratulations. That it seems anymore that is a feat that a lot of people don't make it to. So we're on 13 myself, me and my wife. So hopefully we'll get there one day. But man, that is yeah, thank you. 28 is a feat though. So congratulations.
It's not, being married for an extended period of time is the hardest thing anybody will really do.
Yeah.
It's harder than running a business. It's harder than than raising your kids because you just have, we've been married. We're different people than we were when we got married.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, spiritually, the whole 9 yards. You just change, and to go through those changes and hopefully stay connected with somebody is a really challenging thing, and it helps you. If you can do it and do it well, it grounds you for everything else and opens you up for success in so many different areas.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, me and my wife talk about it quite often about how many different versions of each other that we've been married to, and kind of how interesting that evolution has been. We got married very young. I was 21, she was 20, so it was not only finishing growing up, right? Because the brain's not developed until you're 25, but then also at that point, kind of figuring out life. So it's definitely interesting, and it is difficult. But other than maybe having kids, which may be the only thing that's maybe a little bit more difficult than marriage, I don't think there's anything that's more rewarding.
True, absolutely. When you can look back and see all the things that you've accomplished together, the work that you've done, the things, your kids. Do you have kids, Gino?
I do. Yeah, I have two. I have a 2 and a 5-year-old. I think my high chair keeps popping up over here in my background.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, you're looking back on your kids is one of the most rewarding things ever, and the pain of the moment dissipates quickly as long as there's nothing major. My goal with both of my boys, and I've said this since early on, is to get them both to 25 without having some major life altering incident, whatever that might be. And they both have friends who have not made it to that, right? For whatever reason, like they've had major things happen that will affect their lives forever. And so just hopefully get our boys to that point of, like I said, 25 is an age where, at that point you're still developing and things like that, but you're fully grown. Your mental capacities are pretty well established. And that, I don't want to say spontaneity, but that reactionary thing. When you're young, everything is like this important all the time, right? When you like, yeah, that's neat, but it's not that important. I'm not going to get worked up about that anymore. So that reactionary mentality is what I want to get the boys past.
Absolutely. Yeah, that kind of emotional EQ, and maturity to take a step back and take a breath and evaluate. Yep. That's so good. That's so good. So Jason, we were talking about it a little bit earlier. You're more of a marketer nowadays than you are an auctioneer. So tell me a little bit about what the social media journey has been like. Obviously, KC Auction has kind of been around for a good evolution of social media. So tell us what it's been like for you.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I've always kind of been on the bleeding edge of this stuff, right? When we first started using any kind of social media, it was YouTube and Facebook. Before people thought of YouTube as being social media, but we were doing preview videos of our auction almost from the beginning, when we would go to our gallery in the West Bottoms and we would take an 8-minute video, because if you went over 8, you started getting close to 10 minutes, you couldn't even do anything with it. They wouldn't allow you. They didn't have the space to upload it. So 7-8 minute videos, we would do several of them if we had a big auction. And then we would go home literally on Saturday night after dinner and start uploading them and hope that in the morning they actually were uploaded. And they worked, right? Because nobody else was doing it. And they were getting a couple hundred views, 150 to 300 views, depending upon the week. But we heard immediately how people appreciated it because they really got to see a different perspective than just pictures on a website. I could talk about things as I'm walking by them, but it was also different. And for me, and my wife and I have both been this way. What's really important for us, auctions are fun and interesting and exciting, but if there's nothing there you want, there's nothing there you want. And if I can save a customer's time by them seeing a video and saying, there's just nothing there for me this week, I'm not going to waste my time and take up space for somebody else. Those kinds of things I don't know how I knew, but I just knew instinctually that they would benefit us long-term. And conversely, of course, if people saw something in the video that they didn't see in the pictures or wasn't something we thought was important to write a description about, they would see it and then they would show up, right? So it really did make a big difference. And we still use video a lot. We do live video here on our Facebook page a lot. And we were one of the very first to have a Facebook page. Because, Facebook, the things that people are talking about TikTok now outside of being Chinese owned are the same things I said about Facebook for 15 years ago, 10, 12, 15 years ago, that it was this crazy thing. Nobody's ever going to use it. It's a waste of time. and we started building. The thing that what I wish I'd have realized more at the time was how cheap it was to acquire customers and clients through social media at that time. Gary
Mm,
Vaynerchuk talks about buying wine at the keyword wine for Google for like 10 cents a click back in the day.
yeah.
The same thing was true with Facebook back in the day. I mean, it's not if you do it right, it's still pretty inexpensive, but it was so cheap, and you could do so much more back then that you can't do now because there's so much more competition for space, right? People don't realize that Facebook is real estate, and they can only put so many company posts in a listing in your feed before you start to not be there, right? So when there was a dozen auction houses across the country using Facebook, it was easy to be seen. Now there's thousands of us, and it's more challenging to be seen. So it makes what we put out there more important and less important because we use them. We do a lot more paid for advertising now than we ever used to because it's just the response is so much better than any other thing we've ever used.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's funny. Nowadays people are talking about how Facebook is dead, right? We'll see about that. I don't I don't think Facebook's going anywhere, but from a business perspective, people are kind of rumbling, Facebook's going away. I'm like, you guys said that about print, how long ago? Print's still alive and kicking, and they just shifted the way that they were doing things, right? Which is a big part of social media is the tools have changed, right? So
Yeah.
Facebook was the big one, kind of early 2000s even. I mean, it's still very relevant, right? But in that time we've seen Snapchat come and go. We've seen MySpace obviously kind of die off there at the beginning. I mean, it's there's a million of them. Instagram has kind of come and gone and changed quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it all depends on what your customer base and client base is. For us, we generally our clients especially are older, right? I mean, it's people who have either dealing with their parents or grandparents' estate, or they're things that they've collected themselves. And so Facebook is still very relevant in that demographic, much more so than many of the others. Instagram
Yeah,
is, and we use Instagram a lot too, but it's relevant in a different way.
right.
And so it's just, you talk about the social media journey, understanding what each platform offers and can offer is so important to your messaging on all those platforms. Um, a kind of a pet peeve of mine is seeing, there's a lot of people I follow on LinkedIn and Insta and Facebook, and you'll see the same post on all three platforms. And that works. We do that too. We do that sometimes as well because of either with time constraints or it just works that way. But if you just tweak your messaging a little bit, it's going to be much more relevant to that audience. And the people who follow you on multiple platforms will see a different message. They'll see the same but different, and that makes, I think, such a big difference.
Absolutely. No, it's a great. It kind of goes to what you're talking about with your 8-minute YouTube videos, right? Videos still very relevant, right?
Yes.
8-minute videos not necessarily all that relevant anymore, right? People, the shorter attention span, right? They want the 15-30 second 2-minute clip of here's the overview, right? All right, I saw something, I want, I'm going,
Yeah. Yes and no. So I'll push back on that, Gino.
yeah,
Again, it
please.
depends on your customer. So
True.
when I do when we have an auction, I'll do a Facebook Live auction preview video. And I don't do a good job of scheduling these. I'll just like everything's set up, it's quiet, I'm going for it, right? But I actually have people complain that they're too short
Interesting. Okay.
because it's different. Hey, we're an escape company, right? Like nobody needs anything I'm selling. I understand that completely, but people like it or love it and are
Sure.
passionate about it. And so they want to see when I have something interesting, they want me to just spend some time on those pieces and say, this is, this great piece of furniture. It's by Edwards and Roberts out of England. It was made in 1870, 1880 give time frame. Look at the inlay, the beveled glass, all those kinds of things. And a lot of people don't watch the entire video, but they watch enough that they understand the quality and the direction of the entire auction, right? So there's a couple of trains of thoughts doing big ones like that or doing a bunch more small ones. And it's just when I try and do smaller ones, and there's sometimes I do, it's just hard to find enough time to do enough small ones that doesn't just completely overrun the page and still get any kind of impression on, right? So it's a really fine balancing act. So
Sure.
we've kind of defaulted to the longer form for our preview videos and have found that they've worked out really, really well.
Oh, and I'm glad that you did. Yeah, I mean every business is different, right? And what you need to do for every business is extremely different. And I definitely like what you said about the Instagram versus the Facebook too, right? Because that kind of plays into that, right? The Facebook audience probably wants to see that more educational, entertaining, longer video, where the face or the Instagram audience a little bit younger, they want to see maybe what you got and then move on, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so much more inspirational on Instagram and aspirational, and Facebook is much more. There's more dialogue and there's more. It's just a different mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good stuff. Great points that you brought up there, Jason. Let's get into the next one here. Now, every superhero has a defining moment. What do you think yours is when it comes to your life and career?
It's a superhero defining moment. My gosh, my origin story, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I've said this before. I think I don't know if there's a defining moment, but putting the work into having a good support team around me, a good, dedicating time to my wife and being married has allowed me to do the things that I do now that fall into the category that you're talking about, right? I wouldn't be able to do the things I do in the community with my boys if I didn't have that support in the business and at home. So I think for me that is the strong family base is such an important part of the defining who I am. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff, right? I know that my house is sacred. It's there. It's safe. Not to say that there's not issues, right? We're still adults and we still have kids who
Of
are growing
course.
up, and our youngest and our both of our boys do things we're like, really? Are you kidding me? But we know, and our boys know that at the end of the day, that it's a safe place. We're not going to hurt each other. We're not going to be mean to each other. We're not going to be spiteful towards each other. Um, we're going to be critical of each other and tell each other what needs to change or doesn't need to change. But having that strong support system, whatever that might be for you, especially in a business setting, allows you to do things that you may not otherwise be able to do. And I've seen friends of mine run open businesses, and I've told them you need a support structure, and they don't get it, and they don't last
Mm,
because you just can't. It's so hard. Like running a business is hard. It's supposed to be, right. That's you're doing things that are not normal. You've created something out of thin air that you're giving value to, that you have to convince other people that there's value to it as well, right? People can sell their own stuff on eBay. There's no doubt about that. Why do they need me? Well, they need me for a lot of other reasons. I have to explain to them why and prove that I'm worth that. And it's a 24/7 deal. Even though I don't answer the phone out when I get home, I don't do things like that. I definitely carve out time for myself. But there are times when you get that message at 11 o'clock at night that you have to respond to, right? So um, it's hard, but it's very rewarding. And I think having that support structure is really what helps define anybody who's successful in their business and careers.
yeah, absolutely. And that brain can be your biggest asset or can be your biggest deterrent as well, right? So it is good to have somebody else on the outside that's like, hey, no, you're fine, right? You're doing the right thing. Just keep going. So
Right.
I love that. I love that. Now, Jason, what attributes do you feel define a hero?
I'm sorry, what was that? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, to you, what attributes define a hero?
What attributes define a hero? Somebody who is selfless in their time and efforts, and somebody who thinks about what and how their actions apply and affect other people is some of the attributes that I think define a hero. People that are looking at the bigger picture, not being so self-focused, concerned about your family, your employees, your clients, your customers. How are these things going to be received? Will they, be beneficial to those who are around you when we instigate something new in the business? Just before COVID hit, we were selling online before that. But we decided to use Sign Up Genius to have our customers sign up for a time to pick up their items that they want in the auction. There was a couple auctioneers around the country doing it, and there was some pushback. People like just being able to show up whenever they wanted to. We're like, let's try it. We did it, and we found that it immediately made our processes much more effective and much more efficient. And our customers obviously love that because they went from maybe having to wait 30, 40, 50 minutes to showing up and being gone with their things in their car in minutes, right? It's little things like that, being aware of what's going to positively impact those around you, I think is really an attribution that is important to keep in mind to be a hero.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd 100% agree with you. And I think it's something that society as a whole is maybe lacking a little bit too much of right now is being conscious of people around you and what's going on and, what your actions do to other people. So glad that you said that. Last question here for you, Jason. We're almost done here, buddy. If you had to pick a superhero that relates best to Jason Roske, who is that? And tell us a couple reasons why.
Wow. Superhero. Oh, that's a really interesting question.
This is the one that's getting everybody lately. It's like a dead stop. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, wow, I've never thought about that. I mean, it's hard to think of for me. It's hard to think of myself in the terms of a
Right.
superhero, right?
I get it.
I'm trying to think of Mr. Incredible's cool, but I'm not nearly strong enough. I'm big enough. I've got the he's putting on the suit and it's way too small. I understand that completely after COVID. I think, gosh, what a great question though. I wish I'd have thought about that beforehand. I kind of want to say Black Adam because there's times in my life that have been really, really negative and really dark and down. The Rock movie last year, which wasn't that good, but I watched on a flight recently.
Yeah. So those good movies are great for flights. Those are the best ones for flights.
So that's the most recent superhero movie I've actually watched, and so part of me is like I kind of agree, relate to that, in that there are things that I do that I don't want to, right? But they're better. They make you better, and they make your company and your family better. But you really kind of don't want to do it, right? We're all selfish to a degree, right? I think that's part of nature, right? Is that you want to, I just want to do what I want to do and not worry about anybody else. But you realize you have to do things more than that. So only because I saw it recently and The Rock is pretty cool, I'll say Black Adam. Although that,
yeah, I love it. That's a great answer. Yeah, I actually haven't seen it yet. I was, I heard a lot of not so good things about it. Me and the wife were actually going to sit down and watch it the other day. I was like, I don't know if we need to put an hour and a half. Granted, we were at home. Let me get on a flight. I'll watch Black Adam, no doubt.
But, it was fine.
That's awesome.
I mean, some of the special. I mean, the special effects in these movies. I grew up with Star Wars as my thing, right? I was born in '71, so Star Wars came out, and that was like, holy cow, how do they do that? And now the technology is so amazing, the things they're able to do. But it wasn't terrible, but it certainly was not of the upper echelon as far as superhero movies are. I mean, the Iron Man movies are so good and all. It's worth it to sit through it one time and see what happens.
Absolutely. No, it's good. Jason, thank you, man, for coming on the show. How can people keep up with you? Let's go put the website out there. When's the next auction? And go ahead and throw your socials out there as well.
Absolutely. So kcauctioncompany.com is the easiest one. It's got links to everything else we do. But we're on Facebook, KC Auction Company, LinkedIn. Look for me and my company on LinkedIn, Jason Roske and KC Auction and Appraisal Company. Instagram is popular, of course, if you like looking at pictures. And I appreciate all the hits there on the screen there with this Gino. Right now we have a really good watch auction, pocket watches and wrist watches, Rolex, Patek Philippe, Hamilton, Omegas, single collection. We're working on coins right now. We just picked up yesterday the start of an art auction. Dale Eldridge, who was a professor at the Art Institute here in town, died close to 30 years ago now, 20 years ago, I think. And a lot of his things were in storage for a long time, his personal things, but things he collected as well. And we just picked those up yesterday for the family. So we'll be selling those here at an art auction coming up pretty soon. We have a fine art and antiques auction, decorative arts, fountain pens, a pen collection from the same guy who collected watches, Mont Blanc and Parker and Schaefer. Some just amazing, all the way from like the 1920s through contemporary Mont Blanc. So that'll be fun. We have a lot of interesting things coming up. Jewelry. I'm looking at, I've got a big, almost walk-in safe here to my left. I'm like, what's in there right now? Oh yeah, nice jewelry collection. That's awesome. Yeah, we just have a lot of interesting things. And if people have interesting things they're curious about, we're always ready to take a look at them. You can send us, emails, pictures, or send them through any of the socials. I get messages all the time on things to look at there. We also do appraisal events around town. We haven't done any since the COVID hit, of course. But we used to do a lot of basically an antiques roadshow with KCPT here at a local event that I think we're going to start bringing up again here pretty soon. And it's a great way to find out what your things are, what they might be worth. And if you have questions about that, it's a great opportunity.
Absolutely. You don't have to watch the Antique Roadshow and bore yourself to death. I used to love watching that as a kid, although I don't know why I loved watching it so much when it was incredibly, I mean, it was boring, right? There was interesting stuff on there, but just the way that they shot it was terrible. So don't go do that. Go check out Jason. They'll be doing live events here soon. Check out his social media, his website, right? If you're interested in watches, pens, jewelry, art, any of the stuff, go out there, check it out, hit him up, see what he's got going on. Jason, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. You were awesome.
Thanks, Gino. Look forward. Appreciate you having me on, and look forward to talking to you again in the future.
All right, man. You have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Hey, are we still live? Hey guys, we're still live. Hey guys, this is Kevin Kwok, founder of J29 Creative Group. So who are we? We're a marketing agency here in Kansas City. We're all about a holistic approach to marketing that builds your brand and nurtures online community. But to be honest with you, you guys don't care.